Welcome to the How to Stop the 413 in Summer 22 training. I'm going to go over a little bit about the background of the project, where it's at in the sort of approval process now, and then some of the tools that we've got available for people who want to help organize against this highway. So I do want to start with a land acknowledgement. I'm not going to do a sort of standardized reading out the land acknowledgement, but I will talk about how this particular project connects with the Indigenous communities here and the history in the area, because I think if you're actually making those connections, you'll get more out of a land acknowledgement. So the 413 highway will go through the territory of the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation, and also territory that is historically Huron-Wendat territory. So on the map, you'll see the Petun here. That's a group that was there historically and became the Wendat. But now the Huron-Wendat is primarily located in Quebec, and there are some Wendat communities also, I believe, in Oklahoma as well. So I'm still admitting people, which is good, but I will carry on. So the background is that very quickly, the highway was first sort of conceived in the mid-2000s, and they began studying it as part of a sort of larger transportation plan. The first environmental assessment, though, was shelved in 2015, and the project was canceled by the Wynne government in 2018. After a lot of lobbying from activists and from environmental defense as well. And there's a bit of fun trivia about the highway's name. It was originally called the GTA West Corridor. And until quite recently, all the government documents referred to it as the GTA West Corridor. But an earlier environmental defense campaign actually named it the 413 because that's potentially a number coming up in the 400 series highways. But also 13 is a very unlucky number. So we gave it that name, and it actually caught on so much through a lot of activists being out there saying stop the 413 and the use in the media that the government is now using that name as well. So we do hope that that unlucky number means that it doesn't get built. And then the project was revived by the Ford government in 2019. So I'll go through quickly the impacts. As I mentioned, there are impacts on Indigenous communities. The Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the Huron-Wendat Nation have concerns about the project. They've been submitting separately to the Impact Assessment Agency. They believe it will impact their archaeological and burial sites. And the Mississaugas also said that the project will limit their ability to undertake traditional practices such as harvesting and gathering medicines. We have contacted them a little bit, but as independent nations, they've decided they want to participate directly with the Canadian government and not so much collaborate with us. But they also have very serious concerns about this project. So it's something that's important to be aware of. And then in terms of other impacts, the highway will pave about 2,000 acres of farmland and 400 acres of the greenbelt. And that's just the highway project itself. That doesn't account for any additional sprawl that might be triggered by having this large new highway through a mix of greenbelt and whitebelt land. And the current route of the highway is going to cut right through a section of the Nashville Conservation Reserve, which is really a very beautiful area. There's a great Toronto Star article about how this decision was made and how it was chosen to go through the Nashville Conservation Reserve in order to protect proposed subdivision, not even places where people are living now, but a subdivision that has been proposed by a large conservative donor. So, and then there's a huge climate impact because, as we know, additional highways leads to more driving. And our calculations are that 17 million tons of carbon emissions will be added by 2050 because of this highway. There are also impacts on endangered species. We have a forthcoming report which finds that at least 29 federally listed species at risk will be negatively affected by the highway. Some of them quite severely. And if you're looking for it, there's a blog about 10 or so of the most impacted species, and the full report will be releasing later this year. And then the highway also crosses 132 rivers and streams. And as we know, like the pollution builds up on the highways and there's salt and all of that gets into the rivers and streams. So that's quite bad for our water quality in Southern Ontario. So what is the current situation with this highway that we call it a zombie highway? We killed it once before and we're hoping to end it again, but currently it was designated for review by the federal government in May of 2021. Some of you may have written in about that, or you may have been involved in lobbying MPs to get that to happen. So that's great. So currently, the Impact Assessment Agency, which is a federal bureaucracy, is waiting for a second draft of the initial project description from the province. And we understand that they'll be submitting it sometime this fall. And then after the project description is received, there will be a formal comment period, and the agency will later decide what level of review, if any, is required. So they can send it back to the province and allow them to use their environmental assessments. They can do what's called like a review by the agency, which is sort of the agency experts look at the public comments and require additional reports if necessary. And then there's something called a panel review, which brings in external experts and is much more thorough. And that's what we're hoping to request for the 413. So the impact assessment process has 5 phases. And right now we're in step 1 of the 21 steps in the first phase. So it's a complex and long process, although it's conceivable that during this planning phase, they'll decide to send it back to the province and we won't have the phase 2, which is the impact statement, as you can see in the little graphic, and the other phases. Basically right now, the planning phase determines how much review is needed. And then, as I said, we're hoping to get the most thorough review, which will be done by a review panel. And if that's the case, or if the agency does its own assessment, then the proponent, in this case, the province, will have to make an impact statement. The impact assessment will be done by either the agency or the panel. Then they go to stage 4, the decision making, which is a cabinet decision. Primarily, the Minister of the Environment, Stephen Guilbeault, will decide what to do with the impact assessment agency's impact assessment and what the requirements will be for the project. And then the post-decision phase is sort of ensuring that the proponent complies with the decision that's made in phase 4. In terms of the impact assessment criteria, the main things they're looking at are things in federal jurisdiction. So they're not necessarily, they will consider everything, but the things that really matter to them in terms of whether or not they have to look at this issue as a whole are federal issues in federal jurisdiction. So federally listed endangered species will be important to them. Climate is important to them. And treaty rights are also important at that level. And then also public concern about these areas. So what the public is saying about it and what MPs are hearing is actually important in the process. So now I'm going to go sort of quickly through about 5 things that you can do, and then I'll open it up for questions and we can talk about different tactics in more detail. But we do believe at this point that contacting your MP is quite important because, as I mentioned, the Impact Assessment Agency specifically lists public concern as a criteria. So many of you, I'm sure, have signed our most recent petition, which automatically will email your MP as well as Guilbeault, but a personal call or a paper letter or even booking a meeting show that people are more concerned about the issue. So I have a little bit here from the actual Impact Assessment Act, and you'll see 2B there does state specifically that the full review, the referral to review panel, is determined by some factors, but one of them is public concerns related to those effects. So we have heard from some MPs, they're saying, oh, it's already in the bureaucratic process, so I'm going to let that happen. But the bureaucratic process actually wants to hear about public concerns. So you're very much in your right to ask your MP to pass on to your concerns either to the cabinet, to Guilbeault, or to the Impact Assessment Agency itself. So another tactic that we think might work well is we have made a paper version of the digital petition that we have out now. So this petition is going, as I said, to Guilbeault and to local MPs, asking them for the full panel review. So I'll put it into the chat as well at the end, but I have a link to the Petition Toolkit, which gives you the petition. It gives you FAQ, like a frequently asked question sheet, some fact sheets, so that you're prepared to talk to people about this issue. And the idea is to just get additional names on here. And if they give you an email address, that's actually quite good, because we need to bring more people into the sort of movement and keep them up to date, not just with this petition, but with future things like the comment period, which will open up in the fall. So if you do get some email addresses, we have a Google form that you can pop them in. You don't have to put down every signatory, but anyone who provides an email address, you can put it into the form. And then we can put them into our system, which will automatically email their MP if they request that, or they can just get updates about the highway if they request that. And because Guilbeault is a member of parliament, you can mail to him for free. So if you gather up a few of these sheets, you can just pop them in an envelope, put his address on it, which is also in the toolkit, and you can send them off to him. So I think it's a really kind of engaging way. And you can maybe put a little note that says, oh, I was gathering in my neighborhood, I talked to a lot of people, and most people are opposed to this highway. It gives them a sense that there's people in every community that are concerned about this issue. It's a bit different from getting an automated email. I think they'll sort of see, oh, like people are really involved on this and people are talking to other people in their community. So there's different ways you could gather this. You could do just like people in your neighborhood that you talk to that you think might be concerned. You could go door to door for a short time or for a long time. I think also it would be very valuable to maybe set up outside of a farmer's market or at the Nashville Conservation Reserve, you know, with a Stop the 413 sign and a clipboard and this petition, just talking to people and informing them about the highway. Phil Pothin, who's also at Environmental Defense, and I went up to Kleinburg recently and talked to small businesses. And many of them, even though the highway is going to come so close to that area, weren't aware of the scale of the highway and how close it was going to come. So there's a lot of public awareness raising, and we found in our own polling that as people learn more about this highway, they don't like it. So I have also 2B, you can do this digitally if you don't want to carry around a paper petition. We have both a QR code, which you saw there on the paper petition, and we have it on a poster. So people can just scan that and they can fill out the petition on their phone. And then you don't have to deal with any paperwork or trying to read people's handwriting, which can be difficult. And then there's a link also for like a looping version of the petition if you want to get people to sign up on your own phone or on your own tablet. It goes to, you can see in that second image, it says, thank you for signing the petition and reset the petition. So you would just press that button and you would be taken back to the front of the petition for the next person, if you prefer that to paper. Postering is another great tactic. I think it's actually very underrated. Before joining Environmental Defense and after joining Environmental Defense, I've done sort of a lot of volunteer community activism, and I do a fair amount of postering, and I think it's quite effective, especially for getting the word out in a neighborhood. Maybe not so much in a busy downtown area where there's already a lot of posters, but in a place where there aren't that many posters, these are very, very effective. So we have PDFs of a color and black and white poster that has the QR code so people can sign the petition, and it has the website so people can go and learn more about this highway. So if you want to just put up a few posters, it's great to put it up in a coffee shop, or even a public library might take it. So you just ask at a local business or gathering place if they'll put that up. And people really do notice those if they're on a bulletin board in a coffee shop or a library or a place that they often visit. This is pretty exciting. There's a harvest walk coming up October 1st. So I know actually some of you in this call are involved in this already, but you might want to get involved. It's early in the planning stages. They're just driving the route right now and figuring out exactly where the path will be, but they're going to divide up the length of the highway into 5-kilometer units, and you'll be able to take on a 5-kilometer unit as a group or join a group that's already going to walk 5 kilometers. And that will cover the whole length of the highway, and there'll be a nice ceremony at the end with speeches and stuff. And it's designed to draw attention to the fact that this highway is going to really impact a lot of the best farmland in Ontario and in Canada. And we know now, and there's a lot of food crises these days, and we know that we need to protect that sort of local capacity to grow food. If you want to get involved, you can connect with GASP, which is Grandmothers Act to Save the Planet, or Sustainable Mississauga, or you can send me an email and I can connect you with the people that are involved with that. And we'll probably send out emails about this later on as it gets closer and there's a more formal planning process in place for it. And then the fifth thing is the comment period. So after the impact assessment agency gets the project description from the province, they will open up a formal public comment period. They have a portal on their website where you can submit a formal comment about the impacts of the 413. So it's very important that people kind of do that and put unique comments. So get thinking about that. Think about which institutions in your community, maybe there are small businesses, a community organization, you know, a horticultural society that might want to submit comments and get them prepared. They can even sort of draft some of their comment in advance because there'll just be only about a 14-day window, I think, once they open it up. So it's good to get people thinking about this in advance, but sometime in the fall or winter, depending on when that initial project description comes in, you'll be able to make comments. So I'm going to stop the recording now, and then everyone can unmute who's in the chat, and we can ask questions. I can go through some of the things in more detail. If you're watching this online, there'll be links below that will give you connections to the Petition Toolkit, some resources you might need for talking to your MP, that kind of thing. And if you're in the call, I'm going to put it in the chat as soon as I stop recording.